Before the beginning of human history, a conflict unlike any other was said to erupt in the highest realm of existence, the war in heaven. Though the details differ, they all point toward one powerful lesson. Pride can challenge even the highest places, but truth ultimately prevails. This legendary battle appears in different forms across Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. According to Christian tradition, heaven was filled with countless angels created to serve, worship, and carry out God's divine will. Among these heavenly beings stood one of extraordinary beauty and great authority, a figure later identified in Christian tradition as Lucifer. Many later theological writings describe him as wise, powerful, and honored among the heavenly hosts before his downfall. Yet according to later Christian tradition, admiration slowly transformed into pride, and pride became the seed of rebellion.
Instead of serving the Creator, he desired greater authority and sought a throne equal to God's.
Prophetic passages in Isaiah and Ezekiel have often been connected to this story by later Christian interpreters. The final book of the New Testament, Revelation, describes a dramatic battle in heaven between Michael and the dragon.
The dragon is identified as Satan, the ancient serpent who deceives the world. Standing against him is Michael, the archangel portrayed as the commander of heaven's faithful armies. The stage was set for one of the most influential symbolic battles in religious history. The book of Revelation describes war breaking out in heaven as Michael and his angels confronted the dragon and his followers. Lightning flashed across the heavens as radiant warriors clashed with the rebellious forces. Despite their strength, the rebellious angels could not overcome the power of heaven's faithful defenders. The dragon and those who followed him were defeated and lost their place in heaven. Why should I bow before a mere creature of clay? I will not serve him.
Although the stories differ, both traditions warn that pride and disobedience lead to separation from divine favor.
But the fall from heaven was only the beginning. Next, the battle would reach the world of humanity.
According to Christian belief, Satan's defeat did not end his influence. Instead, the struggle shifted from heaven to earth.
The Garden of Eden became the first stage of humanity's encounter with temptation and moral choice.
In the book of Genesis, a serpent persuades Eve to eat from the forbidden tree. Later Christian tradition often identifies this serpent with Satan, although Genesis itself does not explicitly name the serpent as Satan.
Adam and Eve chose to eat the forbidden fruit, introducing suffering, hardship, and mortality into human life. From that moment, the struggle between obedience and temptation became part of the human story. Throughout the Bible, Satan appears as an adversary, testing faith rather than ruling as an equal opposite to God. The book of Job presents Satan requesting permission to test the faith of a righteous man. Despite immense suffering, Job continued to trust God, becoming a symbol of perseverance.
The New Testament describes Jesus being tempted in the wilderness before beginning his public ministry.
Promises of power, wealth, and glory were rejected in favor of complete obedience to God.
This victory became a powerful example of resisting temptation through faith and truth.
Meanwhile, Islamic tradition tells a different story about Iblis, whose rebellion begins after the creation of Adam.
The Quran teaches that Allah commanded the angels to bow before Adam as a sign of honor.
His refusal was rooted in arrogance rather than obedience, leading to his expulsion.
Unlike Christian tradition, Islamic belief generally identifies Iblis as one of the jinn, not an angel.
Before departing, Iblis asked for time to test humanity until the day of judgment. Permission was granted,
but only within limits established by God's supreme authority. Permission was granted, but only within limits established by God's supreme authority. As centuries passed, the story of heaven's rebellion came to symbolize the eternal struggle between good and evil. As centuries passed, the story of heaven's rebellion came to symbolize the eternal struggle between good and evil. The Book of Revelation became the central biblical source, describing the heavenly battle between Michael and the dragon. The dragon came to represent Satan, while Michael became the enduring symbol of courage, justice, and faithful service. Christian artists across Europe painted this battle as a dramatic victory of divine light over darkness. Towering cathedrals displayed scenes of the fallen angels to remind believers of the dangers of pride. For generations, these images inspired both wonder and reflection on humanity's own moral choices.
Jewish tradition presents a different perspective, placing less emphasis on a cosmic rebellion led by Satan.
In many Jewish interpretations, Satan appears primarily as an accuser or tester acting within God's authority, not as an independent rival.
This distinction highlights the diversity of belief within the Abrahamic traditions. Islam likewise rejects the idea that evil can rival God's ultimate power or sovereignty. In Islamic teaching, Iblis misleads through whispers and temptation, but every soul remains responsible for its own decisions.
The Quran repeatedly encourages believers to seek refuge in God against Satan's influence.
During the Middle Ages, theologians carefully debated the origin of evil and the freedom of angelic beings.
These discussions shaped centuries of philosophy, influencing religious thought throughout Europe and beyond. One of the most influential literary works was John Milton's epic poem, Paradise Lost, published in 1667.
Milton vividly imagined Satan's rebellion, expanding far beyond the brief biblical descriptions.
Although not scripture, Milton's work profoundly shaped how many people picture the war in heaven today.
Modern novels, films, television, and video games continue to reinterpret this ancient story for new audiences. Despite countless artistic interpretations, religious communities continue to distinguish sacred scripture from later imagination. For believers, the central message remains constant. Faithfulness, humility, and obedience ultimately overcome pride and rebellion.
Yet according to Christian teaching, the final chapter of this cosmic conflict still lies in the future. In the final part, we explore the promised conclusion of the struggle between good and evil. According to Christian belief, the war in heaven was only the beginning of a much longer spiritual conflict.
The Book of Revelation describes history moving toward a final confrontation between the forces of good and evil.
Prophetic symbols portray kingdoms rising and falling as humanity continues its moral journey. Despite periods of darkness, the message remains one of hope rather than fear. Christian scripture teaches that evil will not endure forever, but will ultimately face divine judgment. The Book of Revelation describes Satan's final defeat as part of God's ultimate victory over evil. This victory represents the complete restoration of justice, righteousness, and peace. The vision continues with the promise of a new heaven and a new earth. In this future, suffering, death, and sorrow are described as passing away forever. The heavenly city, often called the New Jerusalem, becomes a powerful symbol of God's eternal presence. Jewish tradition likewise looks forward to an age of universal peace under God's perfect justice.
Islam also teaches that every soul will stand before God on the day of judgment and receive perfect justice.
Although these traditions differ in many details, each teaches that evil will never have the final word.
For billions of believers, the war in heaven is more than an ancient story. It is a reminder of daily spiritual choices.
The greatest battlefield is often found within the human heart, where pride and humility continually compete.
Across centuries, this narrative has inspired theologians, artists, philosophers, musicians, and storytellers around the world. Its influence can still be seen in books, films, paintings, and countless works of popular culture.
Yet beneath every interpretation remains the timeless question: will pride rule, or will humility prevail?
The story encourages every generation to pursue truth, justice, mercy, and faithfulness.
Whether understood as history, prophecy, theology, or sacred symbolism, the war in heaven continues to shape religious thought today. Its message reminds us that every decision carries moral significance, and every act of goodness has lasting value. The victory of good over evil remains one of the most enduring hopes shared across the Abrahamic faiths. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed exploring the history and traditions behind the war in heaven, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more journeys into history and faith.